And we got Dwaipayan Chakravarty talking to us from architect urban designer at VKA, has led large master planning projects and integrated townships like Nanded City and Life Republic with leading design firms in Pune. Dwaipayan brings through his experience a handling of complex large-scale projects on an evolved site-sensitive, real estate-sensitive, responsive and well-coordinated approach of going about high-impact development projects. Dwaipayan, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening. I have a hard act to follow after that riverfront development. So I think we have quite a interesting group of discussions. We had a Pune riverfront development, which emotions were flowing, and it had to be stemmed by Khushru. I'll be talking about integrated townships in Pune, which is a very real estate focused builder projects, and how as a master planner, as an architect, I've been my personal experiences in handling some of the projects that I've had, and I had 30 minutes, but I suppose I have to squeeze it quicker. So I'll just start with this. Yeah, so I mean, there are quite a few who know me, but then some you don't. I came to Pune in 2005. I did urban design in Delhi, and I've been in Pune since that time. I did have the privilege of working on, a couple of the first few emerging integrated townships that I was associated with space designers, with Mr. Prakash Deshmukh at that time, from 2017 to 2013. And I helped in developing the master plan for Nanded City and Life Republic Township at that time. There were one or two other townships that we had kind of planned and sanctioned really, but it didn't really take forward at that time. From 2013, I have been working with VK Architecture. I have my colleague here on the front seat, Mr. Vishwas Kulkarni. And I handle a lot of residential and mixed-use development projects, but because of my this legacy of handling a couple of integrated townships, I'm also looking at 2 integrated townships now. So I've gone through an entire decade of approach of seeing various integrated townships. So far I've, through a couple of various integrated townships, I've been able to design about 2,500 acres of integrated townships in Pune. And the last about me is that most people call me DC because I have a large name that they can't pronounce. So to me, I am just kind of reinventing. We had that entire discussion on urban resilience yesterday, and some of those parameters were laid down yesterday so well by James and interpreted in a different way by Vishwanath yesterday. So I'm just kind of putting it forward in the context of Pune. And yes, it is climatic in nature. I mean, that is a very kind of a forefront discussion that we're talking about urban resilience. But I'm also kind of using that same word at various forces of nature. And but in rapidly growing cities like Pune, and we just kind of saw through that example that Ganesh so well presented, that we have seen Pune growing extremely rapidly. It's something that we do not probably, let's say, in kind of like James' presentation yesterday in San Francisco. There's a growth that kind of happens and issues that happen, but in Pune we kind of see spikes and jumps in development every 4 or 5 years. So there are other things that do impact the growth of cities. For me, one of the things that I've seen that, whether we like it or not, and I'm not talking about fancy design thing, is legislation. And over the last couple of years, we've seen various legislations being implemented. I mean, they have been drafted, they have been implemented, and there's an entire group of, we have like 3,500, 4,000 architects working here, more than 300, 400 developers practicing in Pune. And of course, everything that is written in the legislation does impact the type of project that kind of happens. And we have seen in the last years that, if you remember, Pune Municipal Corporation had that, that DCR, and then there was all those circulars, then we had draft rules, we had, even if I look at Pune, there's so many jurisdictions. I mean, we call Pune as one word, but there's like PMRDA, PMC, there was PCNTDA, there was like 3 cantonment boards. This entire area of Pune is probably made out of 7 and 8 jurisdictions. It's not an easy thing to handle with multiple legislations. and it is real estate. I'm not denying the fact that, let's say, anyone who's traveled from Mumbai and come to Pune, 8 out of 10 boards is about some two-bedroom flat for 49.95 lakhs only, right? So that is what we have been seeing, and uh, in our company for the last 50 years, we have been working with real estate developers. They have been our bread and butter. Previously, they held a very high percentage of, let's say, our entire projects. We have been working with other stakeholders and end users, but Pune is real estate driven, and I do concede to that. It is infrastructure, because every time an infrastructure has happened, we have seen elements of change shaping our city. I've been here since 2005, and we've had highways, we've had bridges, we've had, let's say, the onset of metro. A couple of decades back, when the expressway actually happened, Pune, which was that kind of quaint little haven outside of Mumbai, suddenly became rapidly connected to Mumbai. And then Kothrood happened, and Wakad happened, and Kothrood Annex happened, and suddenly we were talking about Shivne being the next Kothrood and all crazy stuff like that, right? So it is infrastructure once a highway comes up. And these are the things that actually impact citizens on a daily basis. We do see climate change and other kind of issues kind of affect them on a midterm and a long term, but on a daily basis, you and me are being impacted. These are visual impacts that we have. And so one of the things that I do want to talk about is the concept of rate of change. We talk about resilience as how do we really address change and the rapid response to such those stresses and change. In Pune and in developing countries and in India, we do have to aspect this case of rate of change. I'm just simplifying it, this thing that in developed nations, we would see kind of the rate of change, which is a kind of a more linear process. They grow over decades. They have already, let's say, reached a certain area of, peace, where they're able to kind of introspect, look back at things. Their population growth is a bit more natural growth. We have exponential population growths and necessary for other things. In India, this is pretty much, I could do even more. I just did this on PowerPoint, but there could be other squiggly lines that you could do as well. But it's like spikes and this down and then suddenly climbing up. And at each such spike, we can actually track those spikes, because there's something that has happened. There's new legislation come in. Some politician has decided, let's make a flyover, and then suddenly that, whether that flyover is good or bad, or the turmoil that it puts to the city, something happens to the area around it, right? So these are the things that we actually witness in developing countries, developing cities, and rapidly urbanizing cities in Maharashtra. And so what I'm saying is that, I'm specifically talking about integrated townships, which are large tracts of land. And they have evolved with these rates of change as well. How is the master plan? And now we master plan and visualize these projects and the people's expectations of these change accordingly. Now, master planning, even though, we've seen such wonderful, as a master planning, I would love to say, just like, Ganesh so succinctly kind of explained, there's this entire study, whether that study, we might pick holes in the study, but, there's this study, there's this analysis, there's this precedence, and then we kind of make projections for short term, mid term, long term. We factor in all those aspects in which we can really kind of dictate the chaos that we are kind of coming through. But I kind of feel that, as we, in my experience over the last 10, 15 years, that master planning has become a bit more intuitive process. This is, I'm just kind of I'm coining a term here. I'm not really coining a term here. I'm just kind of using a term here, which I'm just calling fracture repair. Because what happens is, many of you would have had, you fell off something, you probably broke a bone sometimes. And whenever you break a bone, it hurts like hell. There's hematoma, this, that. You put in a cast, and after kind of 2-3 weeks, you get that big callus somewhere. It kind of forms. That bone really kind of forms up. And so that is what I'm kind of saying. There's a process in master planning where we kind of break things, repair it on its own, and then we are also kind of strengthened by it. So I'll just kind of elaborating that same thing is that, we do kind of master plan for short, mid term, long term, but in India, we are much more reactive to these forces of change, or let's say the intelligent people are. We cannot, we cannot stifle change. I think that has been, the most consistent. There are so many philosophers and poets who've said that the only constant thing is change. But as architects, as a community, sometimes we have been kind of little held back, and we're a bit more, what should I say, we find it difficult to embrace change. But I think something is that we need to kind of embrace change. And during these change and things that kind of happen, those spikes that happen, threshold capacities are overrun. They are crossed. And what happens when we cross a threshold capacity? The threshold capacity is that the system does break, but just probably a little. I'm not talking about a catastrophic break, but when we're kind of design and master plan and some change happens, something that you had conceived and thought that, this is perfect, in 10 years, just like, Ganesh said, that everything is just kind of, it's supposed to work that way, we're going to have sluice valves in the barrages and water is going to flow. And then some point of time, PMC said that, barrages, nah. And the system collapses, right? Because we're just not getting that kind of water. So how do you really predict that? No 100 people over here or Ganesh or, the powers to be cannot really kind of say that, yes, that is going to happen. So something falls. And as we manage that stress factor, the best way that we can do as architects, urban designers, and all these kind of people, that it is our job to kind of manage that stress factor. And what happens is that we go through, and that's what I'm saying, we're kind of very intuitive about that. When that thing happens, a callus is formed. We take that little time, we just kind of this thing, and we are kind of we are strengthened by that entire process. And that is how we have elementarily been as Indian professionals, let's say, in a very way. And we talk about the great Indian Jugaad, and I think I'm just kind of putting it in different English words. So I don't think we kind of make the same mistakes in the same way, or at least we react to it differently. But that doesn't mean that new mistakes or new problems will not arise. We're just able to kind of have more interesting challenges come across the way. Now, at this point of time, I think, just before I move ahead, I mean, first of all, as who are we designing for, whether it's an integrated township or something? This is the rosy picture, right? We are designing for the end users, and this is the full stop. This is the end. No matter who our clients may be, these are the people. This is off some marketing brochure about some happy family who's bought a 3-bedroom flat for only 97 lakhs in Wakad. But those are the guys, that happy family. All of them are smiling so nicely. This is our end users, and we have to kind of think about them. So this is what every architect's role is. No matter if you're doing 2,000 homes or 500 homes, if you're doing 700 acres or not, that little happy family unit on the billboard is who are we designing for. But, I mean, let's acknowledge we are also designing for this guy, right? He is the client, he's the developer, he's who's right, kind of really dictating all those forces in motion. So sometimes, as an architect, we have to design for the end user, but that is something we build into the entire system. The people that we are listening to is the primary person, the patron who's actually given us this job. Why I'm actually talking about this developer is that I want to bring this, we'll come back to this when we are talking about the integrated townships, because there are two types of developers. We have, especially in terms of townships, there's the singular master developer, the big one strong developer. He's the developer, he's going to build, he's going to construct, it's his vision. Or let's say, when I say he, I mean that one company. And what we are now also getting as the master agglomerator. Now this is a new process that so for a very simple say this thing, I think all of you are from Pune, you would kind of, let's say the Paranjpes, you know Paranjpes are kind of, they did that forest trails in Bhugaon. So they bought the land, they're doing the sales, they're doing the building, it's their project, everything is theirs. Magarpatta or Nanded city itself, the muggers, and they're kind of really kind of pushing it, every project is theirs. But then we're getting into this new breed of master agglomerators, and that's what, where changes have happened because of these things. And that's what I want to kind of talk about, that these are the development models that have shaped how integrated development township projects have evolved over the last few decades. Now, in order to do that, I just need to take you through some of these projects. I will talk about the big daddy of it all, which is Magarpatta city. Now, I think all of you know this kind of master plan. I was personally not involved in Magapatta city. I think my only job was I actually rendered this plan when I was a junior architect. I put the plan. I just realized that no one had actually put that on Photoshop. So, so that was my job. Most of it had been done by that. But it started in the early 1990s, and I think it kind of really peaked during the 2000s. And I think the last few work, season mall, and the end, it kind of finished in 2015. It's over about 430 acres, and it's completely privately developed. And it has really nice amenities and everything that you could really kind of ask for. And we have a huge choice of development, right from bungalows to big towers. So that's the image that we all kind of know. You kind of see that in any ad from a TVS Jupiter to a Fruity or God knows. They're all walking that. That's that entire cyber city that we see right in the middle. But we also have, apart from that entire developed area, we also have wonderful areas of calm and serenity, and that's also what I really want to kind of talk about here. It is technically not an integrated township, because when we say technically, I mean techno-legally, it is not an integrated township. It was just an amalgamation project. It was like various plots of land which was amalgamated, and you put a subdivision layout, for those who understand sanctioning terminology, and developed into a basic residential and commercial development. But its success actually ensured that everything that became what the first avatar was called Special Township in 2005, and later on Integrated Townships in 2016 onwards, was that they actually kind of thought of all these things. Mr. Satish Magar, who is a very, very, very senior member of the entire development sector, and he's been with CREDAI. He and his entire team helped envision this sort of a project. Mr. Prakash Deshmukh from Associated Space Designers has been his long trusted confidant and an architect. It's kind of, sometimes it's this entire jugalbandi that kind of works, and in this case it worked so well with Magapatta and how this was developed. So this is the master developer project. This is one developer company with principal. So that means Associated Space Design was the principal consultant. That's that entire spoke. He's at the top of that hierarchy, and really kind of ensuring, taking full accountability for everything that kind of happens. And any changes they are having to adapt at their stage. So what we also see is, that means, if I just take that picture from 2002, where just a little bit of it has been developed, and then 2014, where you actually see most of it being developed. This entire 430 acres literally took 23 years to develop. That entire scale of development that we see took about 23 years to develop, and that's a lot of patience. That's for some people, that's half a lifetime, literally, that someone has been working on this part. So, of course, they didn't rest on their laurels, and they did, Nanded City. In Nanded City, I had the privilege of working on it right from the beginning. I really like this project. So that rendering is also, that Photoshop rendering is also done by me. So this is on Sihagar Road. This is it was originally 700 acres, but part of it was denotified and became 650 acres. And again, they tried to they made all their learnings from Magapatta city, and they kind of created a kind of version 2.0 of this. And there's Kharakwasla Dam just nearby, and a lot of it has been kind of developed. All those, when we kind of master planned the process, we took the learnings from Magapatta city and tried to improve upon it. We really focused even more on ecology. There was a lot of, so Magapatta was in that it was in a very fertile agricultural land in, let's say, East Pune. Here we're talking about South Pune, on the, I think I mentioned, it's on the Mutra river, 5 kilometers of riverfront. And this entire development, so there's a lot of aspects of slope, site management, natural, there was existing fruit orchards and things that we really had to kind of consider when this entire master planning took place. And again, I think, I don't know if anyone from RVG is here. Anyone from Ravi Varsha Gavandi here by any chance? But I think with Varsha ma'am and Ravi sir, I had a wonderful experience really coordinating with them and creating these various ecoscapes and landscape developments. And I mean, I'm going to be talking about, I sometimes realize that master plan, while it may be talking about where the buildings and the road infrastructure is, but at the actual human level, this is what what really works for us when we are kind of going into these areas. And this entire master planning infrastructure, that entire green hierarchy was given, they got a lot of freedom, they got a lot of, sometimes, so what I liked about this entire experience was that Mr. Mugger and their entire company were like patrons. So as patrons, what you do is that you give the architects and the designers that freedom to develop those design ideas. And it wasn't the other way around. So, that kind of entire model was completely different. And some of the work that you see in this entire Nala Park, in those streams and everything that you see is really wonderful. So, these are kind of, there's a big stream park there, there's a riverfront development there, and these are things that we should kind of see which really touch us at an emotional level. These are the places for, like, when I'm talking about holistic health. But then there's intangible aspects. We had those Kevin Lynch's 5 aspects of how we kind of look at things. But, we need to talk about emotions like joy and romance and other things. And that's where kind of city planning comes in. So at, master planning at the large aspects, but those trails, those little coves, that little shadowy area where, you can, I don't know, you can take your girlfriend. I can't tell Satish Mugger that I planned this to sit with my girlfriend, but you need to design that way, that there needs to be a place where you can sit with your girlfriend, right? And these are the things that actually matter at a larger level, because, that's where, as architects, we need to kind of squeeze certain things in. So this is from the stream park. So for Nanded city, I'm not really kind of showing you buildings. There are a couple of buildings that I showed in that entire master plan and that development. But I think when we're talking about these places, these are the areas which really kind of matter. So that's what I said. I think in the end, I've said that the architecture often dematerializes, and the master plan is just a drawing which allows these human emotions to flow and change with the seasons. Now, Nanded city also, it's taken a long time. So it started in about I copy pasted Magapatta city. My mistake. So Nanded city started in 2007, and as of now, out of 650, 700 acres, only about 35% is complete. It's a wonderful township. I'm all gaga about that. But we are emphasizing the fact that the developer and the architect has to spend half a lifetime on the development of these sort of projects. And real estate changes and legislation, opportunity, and so again, you had this master plan and everything was hunky-dory and it was wonderful, but then something happened. So for example, they had master planned this with 0.5 FSI and thinking ki shayad ek tak jayega, ek FSI. By the time then it became 1 FSI, then it became like 1.7 FSI. How do you account for these things? How do you, when something changes, when, at a time when the IT sector and everything was in boom and they had said, hum SEZ pe SEZ karenge, we'll do Cyber City 3.0. And then suddenly you're faced with a scenario that you don't really know if you'll be able to sell 5 lakh square feet of a commercial space on 700 acres. It's a huge dilemma to really react to. Life Republic. This was also a wonderful little project that we kind of, so that was more of like kind of the Muggers and their kind of project. This is in West Pune, where Life Republic, very similar, about 400 acres plus. As you can see from the land profile, it was a very difficult land to kind of really take up. If for most of you who know the kind of, it's called the Magarpatta model, right, of how you kind of really pool in land and do development. Hence you get big, nice, chunky, pizza-sized lands. And this is the more classic areas. I'll take this gut number, I'll take this survey number, and that's why you'll see parcels of land which are kind of more loosely bound, which also means that it has further opportunities for expansion. When you have large tracts of land, you need to understand that that boundary is not a finite boundary. You will expect that as it grows, things are going to increase by 10%, 15%. Maybe we're going to add another 20 acres. So how do you really do a master plan when you don't know where the boundary is? That means you build in these flexibilities. You kind of anticipate those changes again. ऐसे हो ही सकता है कि that there's not going to be any change and it just might stay that area. But what if it does? And you have to build in those flexibilities in that part as well. So these were kind of the initial renderings which we were kind of part of. I've just kind of literally, for the time being, it's been a while since I've been at Space Designer, so I've just kind of lifted these things off the internet to kind of see how they was originally conceived. And like I said, amalgamation and doing this work is a very, very difficult task. And that's one of those aspects that as master planners, you need to be aware of. You cannot say that the client has just given me that boundary and hence, like, what Mr. Ganesh was saying, that that's my jurisdiction. I'm not going to step beyond it. It doesn't really work that way. So they kind of sought to provide a strong urban context where the legibility of the entire land itself, because the land mass was not very super, but they kind of there was prominent nodes, big spinal road, because you want to see that entire 400 acres with a certain amount of legibility that is necessary for a master planning project. And that's the big view. We can see that entire gradation and choice of development. We have small bungalows, large skyscrapers, something to look forward to, a place of opening. Then again, it opens up. And that is how we had master planned. So master plan, of course, is never 2D. It is 3D. You do talk about skylines and development. This is the time when we were anticipating कि एक FSI तो मिलेगा, बाप रे कैसे करेंगे, right? Now, so what I was talking about, something that we had was that it was also a volumetric allocation of gross FSI, which is usually in abundance in these kind of projects. And I think that volumetric, and I'll just come back to that at the end of this presentation, is. And how do we really weave landscape, infrastructure in this kind of thing? Now, in this case, what was interesting was that this was a project which was developed, it's being developed by Kolte Patil developers, but let's say the main promoters was a financial company which you know as ICICI Ventures. Now, so what happens is, it's sort of like there's the director and there's the producer. The producer is pumping in the money. So which was not the case in, let's say, the Magapatta Nanded city examples. There are always banks and financiers, but when you have ICICI Ventures, then you talk about top lines, bottom lines, return of investments. How do we really kind of, if you're pumping in this money, what is the revenue? What is the asset value that I'm actually getting out of this project? So these are terminologies that they don't really kind of teach us in any urban planning or urban design project, but that's actually where the kind of money is coming in. So during this entire process, we really had the opportunity to understand these aspects from a money flow, perspective. Alright, so as you can see, that right from the entrance, there's a lot of capital expenditure that is put in the entire development of this project. As you can see, those are kind of drone views. I had the privilege of working with Mr. Kukre, who's actually sitting on the third row on this for this entire infrastructure development for this thing. I'm very happy to see him here. Yes, you did. I think we fought quite a bit at times as well. So because everything I would say, you say, no, it's too expensive or something like that. It's something like that. So. So we had, so this was a different kind of a, so with every township, you get to learn different things. And here when we talked about, we understood land management. We understood how a project actually kind of works with various kind of sectors. Even though there's a principal developers, we also had a funding house who were kind of really poking in and seeing that, if this sector is done, if you're doing it at 7,000 square feet, but we are constructing it at 6,000 or 5,000 square feet, then what is my rate of interest? And then what means is that I have to densify that development further perhaps or something, right? Which was not fitting into the master plan, but because it needs to fit into the financial scheme of things. Which of course, all that tussle did affect the timelines of Life Republic as well. So I think with 400 acres, we're talking about, Kukre sir, it kind of started in around 2009, 10? 2010. So 2010 and 2022, I think, I've just shown a little part of where we've kind of seen, but, there's still, it's still slow moving at Life Republic. It's taking a, I think they didn't intend it to call it Life Republic because it's taking a lifetime, but it is. I think it's just taking a lot of time for it to develop. So again, Magapatta 23 years, Nanded city, I'm kind of seeing it kind of moving over a couple of decades. We've already had the second generation of the Kolte Patils really kind of trying to come to terms with this development. I've left the company and doing other townships. Everyone's moved on. Now, so this is what I would like to talk about. Now, so what I'm talking about, the Mahalunge Township. I'm calling it the Mahalunge Township because I'll tell you that's currently the name by which we call it. It doesn't have a nice name. It's called the Mahalunge Township, and it piggybacks a failure. And so I'll tell you why it piggybacks a failure. All right. The funny thing is, you can see both these master plans. So both these master plans are of the same project. You would notice that they do not look alike. Right? All right. you would see that the top part talks about this VTP Leonara, and that's VTP. The lower master plan, which does not acknowledge the right hand part where VTP Leonara is master plan by GPL. So they're all talking about the same 100 acres of land. VTP is looking at it differently. GPL is looking at it differently, and it's one. It's like I don't know. I have one wife, another mistress, everything, and we're just trying to make it into one big happy family of this part. So this is actually the primary promoters for this is Solitaire Group, which kind of really take this up. It's also we've been working with Solitaire VK. We've been working with Solitaire for quite some years, but this has been one of their larger projects in recently. So what I'm talking about is in 2017 they actually really took up this project from as a distress sale from Kul developers. Ecoloc, it was called Ecoloc at a point of time, and it was supposed to be a very kind of nice little one of those integrated townships that had launched earlier in 2009 and 10, which was the boom periods for integrated townships, and somehow for various reasons that township collapsed, and I think Solitaire did a wonderful job of really kind of taking that project up and reinventing it. But then Solitaire took a back seat, as opposed to all the master developer approach that we had in the other townships, which was interesting for us, because we were pitching to Solitaire कि हम ऐसे master planning करेंगे, ऐसे skyline होगा, इतना it'll be amazing landscape, and we're talking about riverfront, and then they all smiled and nodded, and then they said, okay, now we have to talk to GPL and VTP. So then we realized that we are also reinventing our role. So rather than being the developer itself, Solitaire then kind of de-risked the project, which is a very important part of kind of, because it was a distress sale in that part, with all compliances, and planned the infrastructure, and then stepped away from the construction. So it becomes like a site and services project. So why we call it Mahalunge Township is that the GPL part, which is now the nicely rendered part that you have this here, they call it #River Hills, and VTP calls it Blue Waters. It's the same damn township actually. It's so difficult that we just call it Mahalunge Township. And on our sanction plans, we write it proposed integrated township at survey number 40/1 Mahalunge and things like that, because we're not able to name the township. But so this is a very interesting model where the actual developer moved back, and they did this entire discussion. They said, what, if fundamentally thing is, they said that if I'm going to do it as the master developer, I can't work on this project and spend half my lifetime. I have other things to do. I have, other things to do. So why don't we all come together? You're a great developer. You have all that, asset and money and construction power, and you're also a wonderful kind of developer. Why don't you all kind of come? And like I said, the wife and the mistress, one big happy family. You take 60%, you take 40%. We'll do this. We'll form whatever sort of LLPs are needed, and you kind of compete with each other to do the best project. So, which was really as an interesting approach. Then, again, we were always through this entire process, and Vishwas also knows that we were thinking, okay, what was our role? We were pitching to be the principal master planner here, while we are left with remnants of two developers who are absolutely happy doing NIMBYism. So what you talked about, not in my backyard, it's my 60%, you look at your 40%, and they're 40%, they're kind of, they're looking at different amenities here, literally. You see they said there's a cricket ground over there. I don't see a cricket ground in GPL, this thing. So it gets really tough for us to really push these ideas. So, but this competitive success, these two developers working with the principal developer taking a back seat, site infrastructure approach, worked really well. So what we see is that because of which we could now amalgamate another 130 acres within these 3-4 years. So now we have 230 acres to actually kind of do. Again, we have GPL and VTP and all that happy family. So where that VK reinvent in this climate is from that we became the principal, kind of amalgamation of dynamic master plans and kind of real estate forces. We we became the, I mean, kind of from both the kind of from the marriage counselor to kind of, kind of taking in and stitching all this together into one master plan and making it actually work so that everyone is kind of happy. So we moved away from that principal master consultant role in this entire approach. And we in this entire thing, because they were practicing the NIMBYisms that they had, we did not have to do that. This was our backyard in totality. So everything that was environmental, everything that was infrastructure, everything that was user-centric, the things that kind of really mattered, we kind of siphoned off the unnecessary, ensured that the other things were in place, and that is how we kind of really kind of got this project successful. So these are, I think they had, we also had a wonderful opportunity to kind of work with different developers and different consultants as well. So, like, for example, I had a wonderful experience working with Arivarsha Gavandi and Nanded City, but there was like one consultant in that group. Here we are talking, dialoguing, conversing, fighting with multiple stakeholders and multiple kind of consultants and collaborating and making something holistic out of it, which was really it's kind of that thing, which is very troublesome, but sometimes at the end of the day, very satisfying in kind of ensuring that part. And I think they've done a really kind of nice job of it all, especially with the way that they've handled the riverfront and everything that has been sensitively done in that area and the things that they are doing right now. Some of these, again, landscape areas have kind of found mention in various awards and projects. And so we are taking the stewardship of the plan. So like I said, it's the stewardship. We are not taking the actual ownership, but we are taking the stewardship of the plan and process, but we don't necessarily stamp out individuality in this, which is a very difficult thing to do as an architect, because an architect is all about the architect, it's me, which is different from him, which is different from him. So how do we really step back and let a process flow in its own way? It was an extremely difficult learning process for us. But what you see between 2018 to 2022 is that within 4 years, 75% of the project is developed. And when I say 75%, you might say, okay, those were 400 acres. This is just 75% of 100 acres. But please understand, this is with 1.7 FSI, while those are based on 0.5 FSI. So this amount of development in these last 4 years, they have launched. So there's the Mahalunge Township and the Manjri Township, that which is like two different, one in west and east. But together in 4 years, they have launched 2 crore square feet of residential launched. That means they have been designed, they have been sanctioned, they have been working drawings all done. 2 crore square feet of development in the last 4 years. In this 100-acre project itself, we've already touched the amount of development that Magarpatta had done over 23 years. And that's how it kind of worked. And this is where, as a developer and as an architect, we had to kind of really step back and had to real estate forces really kind of pave the way for these kind of development. So that is, that's what I'm saying. That change is where we had to adapt as architects. We had to kind of lose a little bit of our ego as well. So here, Manjri, we just kind of replicated the entire sort of a thing. So again, the top part that you see with everything whited out is the VTP part. So all the green and the nice parts where GPL have said, this is our part, and those white parts are VTP parts. I don't really know about it, but we'll do the road in front of you. But, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm sorry. Yep, okay, bye. So Manjri Township, it was all nice, green. Everything you can read about it. I don't know, I think these presentations are made available later on. I just wanted to say that what we've kind of learned in this entire process, this is the last few slides, that master planning, apart from, how we've kind of talked about the first thing from that principal consultant to a kind of a facilitator role, fundamentally what we're doing is master planning in these large integrated township is actually talking about the FSI and massing. So previously when we had like 100 acres of land and we had like one FSI, that's fundamentally that, or that gross FSI is that what that looks. So from this particular land, what we do is then, but effectively there's like 12.5% which goes in city greens, about 15-16% which goes in roads and transportation, about another 8-10% which goes in commercial development that has to do, because these are integrated townships. These are places where business centers need to be there. Another, say, about 5% in amenities and social infrastructure. And quite a little bit of about another 7, 8, 10% in various other utilities and facilities that needs to go. So what we have is effectively about 50% of the land on which that one FSI. So, immediately that one FSI has effectively become two FSI. So this is the basic FSI. And what legislation has allowed since 2016 and further on, the last being 2019, is they've allowed it another 70% to be added on top of that. So the effective density on that yellow parcel of land is anything between 3 to 3.4. The average FSI density on each parcel of land. That's a huge amount of massing exercise that we actually have to explore. So it's not just about the 2D part. How do we deal with that amount of density in an integrated township? And these are things that are selling. I mean, they've done it and they're happy with that part. But it gives to a completely different type of urban scape, right? And we are not used to it. I think I'm still not used to it. So that's what I'm saying. I think that, remember that fracture thing, I think I've hit a fracture. Personally, as an architect, I don't really know what to do with so much of FSI density, and I'm bound to make mistakes. So I concede to the fact that I will make mistakes. I am going to probably, through these design and actions, I am probably going to make life miserable for a few end users, but I will learn from it. And then in the next possibility, I will learn how to handle these kind of densities as well. So what we are seeing is, for anyone who knows about tenement density in these townships, we were getting about 200 to 250 tenements per hectare, which is extremely high, extremely high. So in conclusion, it is extremely tangible, and in Pune and in India, it actually affects at a real-time basis. This is not something that is on paper. This is not something that is just, some intellectual just kind of putting it on a policy document. Everyone feels it here. The second thing is the role of architects and master planners are changing from principal master planners to collaborators and facilitators, and this is something that we actually have to acknowledge if we are able to facilitate that rapid rate of change. And the master plan of these townships are, of course, because they are extremely large tracts of land, most of them are on about 300, 400 acres, very dense development, they are extremely impacted by these changes. And these changes in Maharashtra are forces of nature, but not necessarily nature itself. Of course, we understand nature, rainfall, but I'm just, in this context of this presentation, I'm just moving away from the climatic issues and talking about economic and real estate forces shaping these things. And it is real estate demand, rapid infrastructural projects, and as they become the development injunctions to the region, changing and empowering urban legislation and new compliances, everything that is coming, these are the forces that are impacting our cities and these large-scale developments today. But they need not be undefined. Just because they're kind of, everyone hates legislation and law and policy, everyone hates FSI. But if you really take that pause and look deep within, that does not give you an excuse to do bad design. We can still do nice ecological master planning. We can talk about the human scale. We can talk about everything that is necessary. We're bound to make mistakes. And that is where, the Indian professionals are extremely good at adapting to these things. We will make mistakes. We will learn from it, and we will do better. So, that's where we come in, and that's where our kind of role is as architects, that ultimately it is for the community, for the environment, because despite whatever I talked about these forces, these are the kind of two people that we are really, really kind of dealing with. Thank you.